All right, we're going to talk about the ACT model today. And as you guys were reading in your ethics class, ACT stands for Alternatives, Consequences, and Telling Your Story. So if you've done your reading with it or reading along on Blackboard, you'll see how it's broken down. Some of y'all that are in class today have the sheet in front of you for the scenario and how it's broken down. So I want you to follow along with the template that you have. And the scenario that we have in front of us is an officer that comes across another officer who's asked for assistance. And when he comes across this person that he had been fighting with, that officer has his suspect in custody in handcuffs and is now using excessive force. So he's now hitting excessively a handcuffed suspect who's under control. You, in this scenario, are the officer that's arriving on scene to assist this officer that's using excessive force. In this ethical dilemma, you have to decide, what are you going to do? And this is a realistic situation. What would you do if you were driving up on the scene or pulling up on the scene and you witnessed, a coworker in this case, another officer in this case, doing something that they're not supposed to be doing? So for alternatives, remember we're talking about all the options. So what are some of the options that we have that we can do with this? Anybody have one of the first options that we can do?
Stop the fellow officer and don't tell anyone.
Okay, so you want to, so we want to stop the illegal act, right?
Yeah, stop him, but talk to him about what he did.
Okay, so let's do with the first one. The first one Mike said is we're going to stop him and not do anything, right? We're just going to stop him and just let it be, right? So stop, we'll just put like stop and let it be. Michelle, you said stop him and what?
And talk to him about what he did.
Okay, so maybe we'll stop him and counsel him.
Because you're just pulling up on it, so.
Yeah, you're stopping him and saying, hey, wait, that's what you're doing is not right. You definitely shouldn't be doing this, that kind of thing. So what's another one? What's another option that we have? What's another alternative that we have?
Stop him and tell his supervisor.
Okay, so stop him. So we're going to stop the excessive force, stop the illegal act, right? And we're going to turn him into a supervisor, right?
Yeah.
All right, what else do we have?
Drive the other way like nothing happened.
So we're just going to ignore it, right? Pretend we didn't see anything, right? So ignore it. So again, these are options, right? We can pick from them. So absolutely, a lot of people might just be like, I didn't see anything, don't see anything, I'm not going to do anything, right? It's a very easy way of handling it. Is it the right thing? That's for you to decide. Right? So we'll put ignore. What else do we have? What else are some possibilities that we might be able to do here?
Join in.
Absolutely. Could you see someone else joining in? Yeah. So yeah, you could. It is an option. You might not be saying that to yourself you're going to do it, but somebody might choose that option to join in. What else you got?
Arrest the other officer.
So you want to stop him, and he's committing a crime, right? So you want to stop him, and hey, look, you're committing a crime. You shouldn't be assaulting another suspect. You're committing an assault. So you want to stop him and arrest him. I mean, that's absolutely doing the way the law says, right? You're stopping the unlawful act, and you're arresting a person who's committing a crime, right? So stop and arrest. What else? Any other options that you can think of? None that might be in front of you?
Let him go and then tell the supervisor. Just let it happen and then tell the
There you go.
supervisor what you saw.
Absolutely. You could just witness it, right, and be there to be the backup officer, but not do anything, but turn him into a supervisor, right? So don't counsel him. Don't stop and don't counsel him, but at least turn him into a supervisor. Is that an option? Go ahead.
How about talk to the suspect? Or the
How
person
so?
was arrested.
Like, ask him if he's okay?
Well, no, I mean, ask him what his view of what happened.
Okay. What if that suspect just says, hey, man, he was hitting me too much, and I don't know why he kept hitting me after I gave up?
Well, I mean, at least you asked him.
Yeah, sure. Well, so you want to get his side of the story? Sure, absolutely. So let's go with these 7. Okay, everybody on board with me here? Pretty much of the top 7 kind of ways that this scenario would probably pan out. So tell me about the first one. Mike, you said stopping and just letting it be. So you just stop it and pretend like, okay, it's all handled, it's his business. I stopped him from doing anything more than he shouldn't have been doing, and I'm done. What are some good things with that? So when we say good things, we're saying consequences. So we want good and bad consequences. So let's say a good consequence would be what?
It builds loyalty with that officer.
Okay. So loyalty and trust within the department, right?
Right.
What else? Did you stop the unlawful act?
Yes.
Yeah. So you stopped further unlawful acts, right? So you did stop it, right? Anything else good that we can think about? Those are two good ones, right? Those are definitely good, consequences from this. I'm not saying that they're the totality of it, but they're good things that somebody could say, this is why I did them. How about the bad things that go with number one? And again, we're just saying stop it and then not doing anything else about it. What's something bad that might happen?
You can still continue your actions once you leave.
Yeah, you could leave, and he's not really learning anything from it, right? So that officer did it, and he's not being held accountable for his actions, right? What if you were the suspect? What is the suspect saying? No justice for the suspect, right? Suspect got his rights violated, right? If he's being assaulted. But he is not getting any justice. He's not getting, the rules aren't being followed, right? What were you going to say, Nat?
You can feel mad or, have a grudge against you for, stopping.
Aren't you just kind of just as guilty? Even though you stopped it, you didn't fully do what you were supposed to do, right? Again, stopping and letting it be, at least you're stopping. You're doing something, right? But you're not doing everything you could do. So we have a couple pluses, right? So I'll argue that the loyalty and the trust is an important thing, and I'll argue that stopping the unlawful act is a good thing, right? But no justice for the suspect is a bad thing, right? Not doing you're not following your policies and procedures, because every officer, every department would have a policy about this, about mandatory reporting. So you're not following it. No justice for the suspect, not following your rules. How about in the fact that he's not learning anything? Everybody follow me? So we have some goods, but we have some bads, right? In this case, we have a little bit more bad than we have good, right? All right, so let's do number 2. And we might not do all 7 of these, but let's do all 2. Number 2. How about we stop the officer from committing further, excessive force, and instead of turning him in, maybe you're the senior officer or something like that, you counsel him. And you say, hey, did you realize what you're doing was wrong? You shouldn't be doing this. And he sees the error of his ways or whatever. But you stop it and you go a little bit above and you talk to him about what he did wrong. Tell me about the goods. Or you still have this, right?
Still have the trust.
You still have loyalty, right? You still stopped it, right? What else is good?
You might not do it anymore.
Yeah, he might learn from his ways, right? How about, are you still partially following a little, you're not following the full procedure, but you're doing at least a little bit more to right the wrong, a little bit more justice, right? We'll put a little baby justice up here. How about that? Just a little bit. Maybe the suspect sees you counseling him and says, hey, look, man, there are some good officers out here that are trying to do the right thing. Not everything has to go to a supervisor level, right? But what about the bads? Go ahead.
He's going to learn not to do it around you.
So the same thing we said about the loyalty thing, where there's some trust issues still, right? Somebody could argue that, you maybe don't have my back, right? Because we're always going to see where people are going to try to articulate, I don't want it to ruin a friendship, or I don't want it to ruin a coworker's relationship, or I don't want it to ruin a trust, right? And a lot of times that's a fallback that people go to. They don't want to ruin a personal relationship over a procedural relationship. But in this case, something had to be done. What else is bad? There's still some of the same bads that are up here from the first one. So maybe we'll say, in this case, how about 3 pluses-ish and maybe 2 minuses? So still kind of in that gray area, maybe a little bit more. It's still not a bad way to handle it. Right? Number 1's not a horrible way to handle it, but it's not the best way to handle it. Number 2 is definitely not a bad way to handle it, but still not maybe the best way to handle it. What about stopping him and turning him in for what he did?
You're following procedure, so you don't have to worry about your job being on the line.
Right. So procedurally correct, and you guys are going to have to deal with my handwriting. It's not the greatest today. So it's procedurally correct. He's being held accountable, right? So there's some justice for the suspect, right? What else? Technically, if you're thinking about it for loyalty and trust, you're being more loyal to your badge and your profession than you are to that officer, right? That officer is the one that's making the decision to do something they're not supposed to do. You're doing what you're supposed to do, right? So in a way, it's a bigger loyalty, right? You're being more loyal to your profession and your oath, right? As opposed to just to the person. So you're doing big loyalty as opposed to little loyalty. What about what's some other good? Some of the same stuff we said before, right? Still procedurally good. You stop the unlawful act, right? So we got a lot of pluses in this one, right? Plus, plus, plus. I'm going to put 4 pluses, just for sake of it. How about some negatives?
He's gonna be known as the rat.
Yeah, so you're gonna have that. You're gonna have that little loyalty trust, right? You're gonna have that maybe some distrust with other interpersonal relationships within your work, right? Any other negatives? Any other bad consequences?
Technically, if it wasn't taken that far, your safety. If you're in trouble on the next call, you may ignore it.
Yeah, maybe you don't have backup, right? So there's, especially for interpersonally, there's definitely a negative in this one, right? Anybody want to put more than 1 minus, or we go with 1 minus? So this is definitely a good way of handling it from what we can see so far, right? So let's do it quickly for the next 4. How about ignoring it? Is there any pluses to ignoring it?
No.
How about just the fact that you don't get involved, so maybe if nobody ever finds out, you're just not involved, right? But there's no justice, right? So I'm going to skip over writing it. There's no justice, right? You're not even stopping the unlawful act, right? You're not following the rules, right? You're not doing anything to hurt your loyalty, though, right? To the person. I'm not saying to the badge, but maybe a little teeny tiny plus. And again, we gotta think about how people would be thinking. So somebody would say, you know what, I'm not going to ruin my friendship with this person by ignoring it. So we got to give it a little teeny plus. I'm not saying that you believe in it, but we have to look at all the big span of all the consequences and pros. So with joining in, we got all these minuses and maybe a little baby plus sign, okay? How about stopping the officer, stopping the aggressive act? And not only are you going to be turning them in, you're turning them into the point that you're arresting him. So some of the same stuff as stopping and turning them into supervisor, right? We're doing what the law says. We're doing justice, right? We're doing, all that same stuff. But sorry, you try to write on the board. We're doing all the same stuff as here, but let me ask you a question for anybody who has any experience in this. Is that your role in the department to be placing an arrest on another officer? Where would that typically fall in a department? A supervisor of internal affairs, right? So you're kind of going outside of your role, right? So yeah, we got a lot of pluses to this one. This one, like morally, with moral formalism, this is definitely good, right? You're doing the ultimate good of this one, right? We're doing lots of good. But we technically are doing some bad, right? Because we're not following our procedures. We're not following our role and our duty, right? Remember roles and duties for the first couple of chapters? So yeah, it's good, but it does have a negative to it. And then how about not doing anything, not stopping him, but turning him into the supervisor? So you're not stopping the unlawful act, right? But you are getting justice, hopefully, for the suspect, because somebody's going to be held accountable. Go ahead.
You're going to get in trouble, too, because you
didn't do anything. You didn't do your job, right? You didn't act on, yeah. So
there's showed that you knew about
there's
it.
a negative. So we do have a little bit of justice, right? You are following the rules, right? Partially following the rules. But you're not stopping the act, so maybe the person gets more injured. You're not doing anything to help the situation at all as far as justice goes, any of that kind of stuff. So at best, we could maybe call this one equal, but I'm going to put one more minus on it. So let's look at the mathematical side of telling your story. So now that we've looked at all of the possible alternatives, all the realistic alternatives, and we've looked at all the goods and the bads, and mind you, we'll type these out, and you guys will type them out on your assignments. We've looked at all the goods and the bads down through my bad handwriting all through down here. So we have goods and we have bads. So our telling our story is where you mathematically decide how do you want to tell it. Because let's start with the first one. Would this be a horrible way of handling it? Could somebody totally handle it this way? Just stopping the guy and just saying, you know what, it's over with? Look, you stop the officer from assaulting the suspect, right? And everything goes, now, we'll assume after that point, everything goes the way it's supposed to be. We don't know what the suspect said, but maybe the suspect doesn't care. Who knows? But you did some good in this one, right? This one's just a little bit on maybe the unethical side. But still, it's kind of equal, but maybe a little bit less. Stopping him and talking to him, however, mathematically would turn out to be a good, right? We're saying that although there's some things that are negative about it, we still are doing a good, right? I think you could still argue that you're doing a good here, but not the ultimate good. How about stopping him and turning him into supervisor? So you're doing lots of good, a little bit of a minus, just for the whole interpersonal relationship, but a lot of good on this one, right? How about ignoring it? Can we already mathematically see that ignoring it is not a good thing? Maybe this little teeny interpersonal relationship for a plus, but we're going to say that one's out of there, right? How about joining in? It's just as bad, right? How bad is joining in? You're just as guilty, right? So we're going to say that one's out of the picture, right? How about stopping and arresting him? We're doing technically we would be doing, in ethical formalism, we would be doing the ultimate good, right? We are stopping the act and we are doing everything that's supposed to be done ethically, right? We're stopping the illegal act and arresting the offender, another offender, right? But that one's got a lot of drawbacks. You might get in trouble procedurally. It's not your job. You're still doing good, but you're kind of risking your own practical welfare with this one, right? Although you might do good, you might have to pay for doing that ultimate of a good because you're doing something outside of your duty. Everybody remember duties from chapter 2, I believe? So while it's good, it has some bad to it, but if you felt it necessary to do it, you might have to do it in that scenario. And then just turning him in, we're going to call that one maybe equal, but not all the way to the point that it's good. It still has this little bit of extra negative to it. So tell me about the reason. Let's end this scenario with the reasonable choices. How many people in here would say that stopping the unlawful act and then letting the rest of the scenario play out, would that be a bad thing? Would anybody say that that's, right now in this class, say that that's bad? It's bad? Okay.
Stopping and not doing anything?
Yeah. Yeah. But, they're still doing something there, right?
Right.
So, as far as, would this be bad by not doing anything, or would it be kind of more in that moral, kind of gray area ground?
Gray area?
Okay. It's all going to be up to you. This is definitely a choice that you could make, and you could see a lot of people making this choice, right? You did what you needed to do, and then you got out of the situation, right? A lot of people would pick number 1. How about number 2? How many people would pick number 2? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I see 8 hands in here. This is a pretty good one, right? You're stopping him. You're telling him what he did wrong. Now, you're not turning him into the supervisor. Maybe it's his first time. We don't know. We can let those things play into factor for other scenarios. But, we're doing some ultimate good. We didn't do the perfect good as far as formalism would say. But we did some good, right? Definitely a good answer. Go ahead.
But I think he's going to the supervisor's going to find out anyways.
Maybe. We can't assume that. Because in this scenario, we're not going to assume anything. Okay. But let's say we never know. Let's say he didn't. This is definitely still better than this one, right?
Oh, yeah.
How about stopping him and turning him into the supervisor? Who wants to stop him and turn him into the supervisor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. So let's see. I didn't have anybody pick this one. I had 7 here. I had 8 here. Who wants to ignore it? That's a pretty obvious answer. But how easy in everyday life, in any situation, is it to ignore something?
Really easy.
I always say that the easiest thing to do is ignore something, but the worst thing to do is to ignore something. If you ignore cancer, what happens? It gets worse, right? If you ignore this, is it going to get better? No. You got to do something, right? You got to do something here, right? How about joining in? Nobody wants to join in, right? Why do people join in? Because they get that interpersonal thing mixed up with their moral code. They get that interpersonal problem of I don't want to make anybody mad. I don't want anybody not to be my friend, that kind of thing. They get that interpersonal problem mixed up, or they get their moral code mixed up, and next thing you know, they're joining in. They're just as guilty. How about stopping and arresting him? Does anybody want to stop him and arrest him? Wouldn't we all agree that that's, as far as formalism goes, that's the best thing to do?
I feel like that sets a relatively dangerous precedent because then it says, well, if any officer sees something that they deem is immoral, whether it be immoral or not,
right,
they have the right to arrest them and do that whenever they please.
Aren't you kind of putting your own physical safety in there too? If he's willing to assault a handcuffed suspect, wouldn't he maybe be willing to assault you? So you've got to talk about your own personal safety too in here, right? Real quick, Matt.
If that officer that rolls up happened to be said sergeant, sure.
Okay, yeah, maybe. How about turning them in? The last one. You're not doing anything, but you're turning them in. You're still holding them accountable, right? But you should have done a little bit more, right? Is it a bad thing to turn them in? No. You should have done a little bit more, but this still isn't bad, but it's not good. So I got quite a few people who said stop them and counsel them. I had quite a few people that said stop them and turn them into the supervisor, but I didn't have anybody pick what would be considered the ultimate good, right? This would be considered the ultimate good, but is it reasonable? And that's where this class is, in this ACT model is. It's in practical ethics. I don't expect you to choose the most negative. I sometimes don't expect you to choose the most positive. But would you be a bad person if you stopped it and didn't do anything? I'd argue that you wouldn't be a bad person. You could have done more. Would you be a bad person if you stopped them and you only counseled them? No. I'd argue that you're still doing a great job. If you stopped them and turned to the supervisor, that's probably where most people would say is the best thing you could do realistically. Although the best thing you could do, formally would be this, but you're still violating your rules. But as far as moral ethics go, would be here. But some of these equals they're not bad things. So telling your story is looking at all of the alternatives, all the options, looking at all the goods and the bads, all the consequences, right? All the good consequences, all the bad consequences, all the pros and the cons, and then looking at all of them and using this range, this scale, trying to figure out which one do you want. Any questions? Thank you. And